welcome to those in attendance this evening here in the auditorium and those at home. Welcome to the December 3rd meeting of the regular meeting of Council. My name is Councillor Bestwick, and I will be acting on behalf of Mayor John Rattan, who is away on a much-deserved vacation, so it's my privilege to call the regular meeting of Council to order. Mr. Howard, if you could please introduce late items.
Thank you. Thank you, Acting Mayor. The late items are the announcement from yourself regarding the recent increase in pedestrian accidents. There's also a deletion of item number 1 from agenda item 8I, which is the approval of 60-year lease to Pacifica Housing Advisory Association for supportive housing located at 6025 Uplands Drive. There's also the replacement of pages 53 to 56 of a staff report, item 8I, approval of the 60-year lease to Pacific Housing Advisory Association for supportive housing located at 6025 Uplands Drive. There's also the additional correspondence under agenda item 10B, school community connections applications, letter from Mr. Jamie Brennan, Chair of the Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools, otherwise School District 68. And there's the replacement, pages 107 to 109 of the staff report, Nanaimo Center Stage, 25 Victoria Road, agenda item 10C. That's it.
Thank you. May I have an adoption of the agenda as amended?
Move adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, before you move the adoption, I will also be bringing a notice of motion under
5C.
14 regarding town hall for the budget process.
Mr. Howard, that would be 14C. Thank you. May I have a motion?
Councillor Bestwick, Mr. Chair, sorry. Are you asking for notices of motion to advise you will be making notices of motion at this point, or shall we wait?
I don't believe that that's necessary, but in the event that you would like to make that known, we could add it under 14C, D, and so on.
I'll be making a notice motion on riparian setback variations.
Thank you. So we have that recorded as 14D. So moved Councillor Johnson and seconded by Councillor Kipp to adopt the agenda as amended. All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the minutes of Council held at the Shaw Auditorium on Monday, November 19th at 7 p.m.
Move adoption of the minutes.
All in favor? Carried. Now we have presentations. Mr. John Leach, the Executive Director of the Applied Science Technologists and Technicians of British Columbia, to present the City of Nanaimo with the Tech Green ASTTBC Award. And the award will be presented to our committee chair of the ACES Committee, Councillor Diane Brennan.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor and members of Council, for the opportunity to join you this evening. During National Technology Week in November, we had the opportunity at our Technology Awards and Recognition celebration to present the Tech Green Award to the City of Nanaimo. Receiving the award on behalf of the City was Bruce Joyner and Bill Sims. I think you know probably most of the activities for which the award was recognized. It includes a number of initiatives, including signing on to the Climate Action Charter in 2007, the Water Conservation Strategy 2008, College Park Pump Station Gravity Bypass, and a myriad of other initiatives that the City has taken on. We congratulate you on all of that. Sustainability for ASTTBC is an association of some 10,000 registered technologists, technicians, and technical specialists is absolutely crucial, of course, for our members and what they contribute to the province of British Columbia as part of a team designing, constructing, inspecting, testing infrastructure across the province. It's part of the initiative for ASTTBC to help promote science and technology. We're concerned that there are far too few young people sticking with science, technology, engineering, and math in the K-12 system. We're concerned that there are insufficient numbers of technologists and technicians registered across the province, getting this kind of education that's sorely needed. We have a serious skill shortage. So this award is one more opportunity that we have to draw attention to this serious need. You know, we looked at a study recently where 39% of kids, young adults, 16 to 18, were looking at taking one course in post-secondary education. So there's a real need, in addition to the considerable effort that's going into promoting trades in the province of British Columbia, and we know that most parents are looking for their children to go to university. In that middle ground is the technologist and technician. You have many exemplary members of ASTT on staff. So this award is our opportunity to say to you, the council, as the leaders, to the community, what a marvelous job you're doing in promoting sustainability. We congratulate you and thank you for this opportunity to present this award, and also a letter of congratulations from the Premier of British Columbia. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to have the two members that were in a leadership position come up and be here for the award as well. That's Bruce Joyner and Bill Sims.
And Diane Brennan, of course.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. We much appreciate the award and the presentation.
Bruce Joyner here.
I'd like to do a photo or two if we can.
No, we missed this.
Every year we bring that on.
We should have done it during So I'm just wondering, I can't remember which councillor.
George.
Maybe just ask George after this.
Okay. Thank you. George. Sorry. We're going to go back to... Thank you, Mr. Leach, and congratulations to everyone involved with the project. Well done. At this time, I would just like to refer back to an omission, and Councillor Anderson wished to bring forward a delegation from later in the agenda. So, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to bring Miss Jeanette Pongratz-Doyle to the front of the agenda under, I guess would be presentation C.
Correct.
If council will indulge her to come to the front.
All in favor? Carried. Next up, under presentations, Mr. Sasha Angus from the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, CEO, to provide a presentation regarding the NEDC activities and the strategic plan, accompanied by AJ Hussins. Welcome.
He is right behind me. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. Those people who don't know me in the room. My name is AJ Hussins, and I'm proud to be chair of the NEDC, the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation. I want to thank Council collectively and individually for your support last year, year and a half, almost 2 years in its making. I'd also like to thank the members of the board. We have some with us in the audience, and we also have some staff members as well, if you just want to wave so people know who you are. Thank you for coming tonight. Past year, there's no question there's been some challenges, but I want to make sure that everybody is aware that the board and the staff at the NDC have come together to keep things moving forward in the right direction. The governance and operational systems of the NDC are definitely in a good place. We're happy to have our new CEO, Sasha Angus, with us. Sasha's team have been hard at work and would like to share with some of the activities and highlights of the NDC, as well as update on a few of the economic statistics for your information. So with that, I'll hand over to Sasha. Thank you very much.
Thanks, AJ.
Okay.
Evening, everyone. I got to say it's heartwarming to see so many people out for my first economic update. That's very encouraging. It's been a wonderful reception from the community. Just wanted to go over a bit about what we are and who and what we do. The mission of the Economic Development Corporation is to foster a prosperous community through economic opportunity. And so on a day-to-day basis, it takes a number of different facets about how we approach that. Really, it's about providing household-sustaining jobs for our citizens and diverse and new business opportunities for our community. And so what we do, first and foremost, is help foster entrepreneurs. And that can really run the spectrum, all the way from an entrepreneur with a great idea but no business plan. We can connect them with the resources they need to get started, all the way up to companies that may have had some success, 5-10 years in business. They have a good track record of success. They need to take their business to the next level. They need to look at new opportunities for access to capital, new investment, as well as the opportunities to explore new markets. And we have the resources and connect them with the resources throughout the community to make them more successful. The reason this is important is that about 75% of the new investment in our community comes from these businesses. And so the more we can do to reach out to our local entrepreneurs, make them bigger, better, faster, the more household-sustaining jobs that they're going to create and new capital investment that they're going to make into our community. And so we spend a lot of time and a lot of effort making sure that we can reach out to our local businesses and help make them more successful. Once they're successful, we need to keep them. And so we have had ongoing what we call business retention and expansion programs, where we go out and meet with the CEOs and meet with the companies and saying, what are the challenges that you may be facing? What are the opportunities that we can help you embrace? And again, connecting them with the resources and making sure that we have peer mentors for them to talk to, so that if they're experiencing a challenge of entering the Chinese marketplace, for example, we know of companies in the local community who have had those challenges before. And so it's an opportunity for us to mentor as well as provide new resources for our businesses to keep them here. It's like any good business relationship, that it's easier to keep and build a strong relationship than it is to go out and find new customers. And so we want to make sure that the businesses that are here, that they recognize that we appreciate their investment in our community, the household-sustaining jobs that they create, and that we foster the next investment dollar here rather than somewhere else. And the communities all across the province who have folks just like us who have the siren call of, wouldn't it be nice in the interior, wouldn't it be nice somewhere else? So we need to make sure that we're really reaching out and making sure those businesses stay here. Probably the most public face of economic development is investment attraction. And we meet with investment groups about once a week, talking about the different attributes that we have as a business climate and an investment climate. What we're looking at is how we expand that brand and the business brand for Nanaimo to make sure that people understand that we have a great transportation system, great land costs, all the different business inputs that a business needs to be successful. And so we're spending a lot of time on really, refining the business case for why Nanaimo is a great place to work and invest and live as well. The other part of our business, that's the economic development side, is our tourism side. And so we do tourism marketing and development. We are very fortunate to have a wonderful group called the Tourism Leadership Committee as part of our organization that provides us guidance. There are people who are huge tourism boosters for Nanaimo. They're working right now on a 2 to 3 year strategic plan that we are going to unveil, receive shortly, and implement probably in the January timeframe. This will allow us to look at how we market Nanaimo better as a tourism destination, how we attract people from the island, British Columbia, across Canada and across the world to have an authentic, wonderful West Coast tourism experience that we can offer. The second part of that, which is something we haven't done before, is how we look at new tourism experiences. And so we're looking at how the NADC can engage with local partners to look at developing new tourism experiences. And that's something that we, like I said, hasn't been done before, but we're looking forward to implementing that in the few months to come. There's a series of other opportunities I just wanted to highlight to Council. The first one is shipbuilding and repair and the marine technology sector as a whole. This is a wonderful opportunity with the West Coast bid that was successfully secured by Seaspan. There's a lot of activity happening in North Vancouver, in Victoria. That's displacing a lot of activity that can come right to Nanaimo. And so when you think about our local economy, our median household income is around $53,000. These jobs, they're well-skilled, good-paying jobs. They tend to start at around $65,000. So every job that we can attract in the marine business is like adding an additional household's worth of economic stimulus to our local economy. So not only well-scaled, good-paying jobs, but tremendous impact for our local economy as well. The second one, and that's a picture of the future state of VIU, if we're successful, is international education. Again, our community, like others, will be facing demographic headwinds over the next 5 or 10 years. There's going to be a global hunt for talent. So our ability to bring new, young, bright minds through international education into Nanaimo is an incredibly important asset for us. And VIU in and of itself is not only a huge economic generator, but just that key catalyst that we need to help bring new minds in. When they come here, not only are they wonderful contributions to our local economy and to our community, they spend about $38,000 a year, cash, in restaurants, rent, and supporting the community in a number of different ways. When you look at the pre-tax income that you'd need to foster $38,000, it's around $52,000, $53,000. Again, an additional household's worth of economic stimulus for every bright young mind that we can bring into our community. The last piece, and that's just south of here, is green energy and our green industry. We have a number of companies doing world-class research and world-class product development in the community. This is one of the few sectors globally that's actually grown in the past 2 years. If you look at it, we think of it, I guess from a North American perspective, as a nice to do. It's actually incredibly good business as well. It's twice the size of the automotive and aerospace sectors combined. And Nanaimo, for a number of different reasons, has a lot of attributes that companies in the sphere find very attractive and that we can grow on, or we can build on in the years to come. So I wanted to go over just a few of the highlights of what we've done in 2012, and there's been a lot of activity. I won't take credit for any of it. It's the team behind me that's been the real driving force around that, and the board as well. As I mentioned, we've had our export peer mentoring roundtables once a month. We get a number of businesses together, about 25 in total, and it's a wonderful resource for them, new exporters, people that have more experience about entering marketplaces. Again, export development is one of the fastest ways we can stimulate employment growth here locally, as well as investment and capital investment here in our community. And so we spend a lot of time helping those companies be more successful in international markets. Our Tourism Leadership Committee and the strategic plan I had mentioned, we are very happy to work with staff and council on our new Northfield Visitor Center. It's been remarkably well received, and it's going to be a tremendous asset for our tourism community going forward. So thank you again for the city's support, and thank you again for staff support in making that possible. An incredible new attraction for our community. We are just putting to bed our 2013 visitor guide, which will be going out across the island, lower mainland, and throughout Alberta, looking at all the great tourism opportunities that there are. We've got 2 new websites that will be up and going around the end of this year, as well as new videos showcasing Nanaimo as not only a tourism destination, but an investment destination as well, and our branding initiative. All these programs and all these projects, we're very happy to say were provided and won by local companies. The last piece, about the end of this week, I think on Thursday, we're going to be sending out over 6,000 business condition surveys to local businesses here. This will be the first time that's been ever done. And we have a series of questions that are easy to answer, but important too as well. And that is, what has been their experience over the past 12 months versus the year before? What are their hiring intentions likely to be for the next 12 months? What are their investment intentions likely to be for the next 12 months? There's a series of about 10 different questions that are going to give us a really good insight into what 2013 will look like from the business community's perspective. That's something that we're going to aggregate throughout January and hopefully have ready out for the community at the end of January of next year. So we think it's a wonderful resource to be able to look at, and not just look at past statistics and maybe historically what we've done, but really get a good idea of what the business pulse is for the next 12 months to come. We've had a series of investor presentations, as I mentioned. Our marketing campaigns have been fast and furious, a couple of them a month. We had one that ran at Toronto Sun just about 3 weeks ago. People actually showed up on the doorstep of our tourism operators with the Toronto Sun in hand within about 3 days. So that was a really good punch. We got, I think, about 3,000 direct referrals through that program, which has been fantastic. Our business retention and expansion forums, we've held one every month. The last one will be on December 11th of this month with the arts and culture sector. I know some members of council heard me speak. Arts and culture is not only the fabric of our community, but it's a huge economic driver for Nanaimo. And lastly, we hosted all of the province's international trade representatives in Nanaimo about 2 weeks ago, and we've already gotten dividends from that with new investment leads and with new opportunities for businesses to come to Nanaimo. So it's been an active 12 months. We are working right now with the strategic plan and the business plan that the board's going to approve later on this month, and we will continue to roll up our sleeves and get to work for our local community. So that being said, I want to go over quickly just a couple of stats that you might find of interest. This is our participation rate, which has been steadily climbing since 1996. That's the number of people in our community that are in the workforce as gauged by the total population. So an increasing participation rate means more economic opportunity. Typically means more young people in the workforce as well, which is encouraging. This is our unemployment rate, which is well below where it was even 4 years ago. And so that's something that we're starting to hear from local businesses as they're hiring up with new contracts. We want to make sure that we still have the skilled workforce to be able to reach out and help deliver the new business that these companies are rewarded. When you look at our workforce size, it's as high as it's ever been. And so, again, we don't want to take this for granted. We want to make sure that we continue to provide household-sustaining jobs for our citizens. We also want to make sure that as we skate to where the puck is going with demographic challenges, that we continue to showcase Nanaimo not only as a great place for quality of opportunity, but a great place for our quality of life as well. New businesses, happy to say that there's been 744 new businesses to the end of November. So that's fantastic. 20% of them were in the construction sector, an additional 14% in the retail sector, and the last 14% are what they call professional, scientific, and technical services. These are all good household-sustaining jobs and great businesses that are knowledge-based in general, and so very encouraged to see that as well. And with that, I don't want to go over on my time, so I'd like to say thank you to Council for the warm reception personally, for the support for the NADC over the past year, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I see the board lighting up. Councillor Pachi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. very much. In the beginning of your presentation, you talked about export readiness. And when I had a very quick glance, albeit at your second last slide, where the 744 businesses are mentioned, could you put a bit of a context to that?
Sure.
What are we to get ready to export specifically?
Sure. And this is for local businesses. Some of them, we have actually a number of businesses that do a great job exporting. Some of the small, medium-sized enterprises, when they're looking at export, when they're not either delivering into the United States or some other export markets, helping them get export ready, which is here are the different steps you need to go through as a business to be successful at exporting. We can provide them with that background and with some of those resources to make sure that they're at a place where if they do choose to go into the United States or other markets, that they'll be successful. And so the more businesses in our local community that we can have that are exporters, the more economic prosperity we would likely to have. And so as they win new business out of the United States, typically means they need to staff up here in order to fulfill those new opportunities. It also means they typically make new investments in our community from a capital perspective as well. And so export readiness is helping the businesses that want to take that next step to go through the process to be successful in those markets.
Okay. Follow up, if I may?
Absolutely.
Tourism. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, we're not doing this in isolation. Could you talk about the connection Vancouver Island versus Nanaimo?
Absolutely. And we've got very strong partnerships as Tourism Nanaimo with our stakeholders, but also with what they call TAVI, which is Tourism Vancouver Island, and the new Destination BC, which the province is rolling out over the next weeks and months. And so we take a look at our partners and how we help market Nanaimo to sort of the island and the rest of BC. Then we work with TAVI to really broadcast that message even further throughout the Pacific Northwest and markets farther east. And then we work with Destination BC into those markets like Japan, China, United States, where we can amplify the investment that we've made in tourism marketing by piggybacking and collaborating with them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pachi. We have Councillor Greaves, Councillor Johnson, and Councillor McKay. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Sasha. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
The previous slide mentioned 744 new businesses from 2012 to date. Now, can we compare that to last year before you were here?
We're about on par to the end of the year to match last year's new business formation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sasha. Your very last slide, I was wondering if we might share with the viewers that are watching that haven't had the opportunity to see that wonderful new cruise ship facility. That's the foyer, the entranceway into the cruise ship facility. So it's, in case people are wondering at home what that is, it's a beautiful, beautiful new facility. Sasha, can you share with us or give us some insight into what new tourism experiences we might be in?
Sure, and there's been a number. The process that we went through with reaching out to the public, we received over 110 individual submissions, which I can tell you, compared to almost any other community, was a massive response, which is fantastic to see that people are passionate about it. We're going through, and I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the TLC before they sort of finalize the report, but a lot of the familiar names that you'd think of have been brought forward by members of the public and others. So we're just taking a look at how we would work with individual community champions around a project. If there's a feasibility study that needs to be done, how does the NDC support that? How do we sort of create those criteria so that as people bring projects forward, we can say, this is fantastic, we can connect you with A, B, and C resources to hopefully move things along. So if I could beg your indulgence for hopefully a couple of weeks, we'll have more on that.
Well, thank you. I look forward to that report.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKay and then Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask, in actual fact, I know it's a little unusual, I wanted to ask Mr. Leach this question, but you can help us with it. And that is, it seems sometimes that younger folks all want to be the next Bill Gates, when in fact there are many, many, many trades that require entrance into. And wondering, how do you work with the university and organizations like Mr. Leach's to ensure that the proper training is being provided for folks that can actually get real jobs? In other words, they're training for jobs that exist.
Sure. In a number of different ways, actually. I was meeting with VIU this morning. Dr. Nielsen serves on our board, which is also a great connection. We actually held our last business retention forum was around large employers and the market providers, so including VIU and other folks in the employment industry, to make sure that the folks that we are graduating match up with what industry's needs are. I know a lot of the colleges across Vancouver Island have stepped that up significantly in the last 2 or 3 years, and it really speaks to what will be an impending skills shortage if we don't start talking about all the diverse types of educational opportunities that they are. Thankfully, there was some polling done where it used to be 80 to 90% of the parents wanted their children to go into university. There's some polling done by the BC Business Council that shows that a lot of good messaging has come into households across the province, and now a lot of them recognize that skilled trades and other types of education are equally important. So,
okay. Thank you, Councillor McKay. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Angus, for your presentation. I just had a question around students around VIU and also new families into our community. As you know, a lot of young people are moving to Alberta and other parts of the country instead of staying here in Nanaimo. And I was just wondering what your opinion is and what we need to do to be keeping these young people here, but also attracting young families who are also going to continue to invest in Nanaimo's economy for many years.
Sure. Thank you. And that was actually the subject of the meeting I had at 9 o'clock this morning, which was how do we marry the MBA graduates from VIU with business opportunities in the local community on a number of different fronts. One, by providing businesses with opportunities to hire MBA students to manage projects for them. So if there's a small, medium-sized business that needs market research into South America, they're looking at sending products into Brazil, for example, we can have teams of MBA students go out and do that work for them at a very affordable price, which is encouraging. We're also looking looking at in the next 5 or 10 years the business succession issue, which the same demographic forces that are impacting our workforce are impacting our business owners. And so how do we marry those MBA students who may have family resources that would allow them to invest in local businesses with those businesses owners that are looking to retire in the next 5 or 10 years? And so that's something those are ongoing conversations that I know the Chamber, Innovation Island, Mystic, VIU, and ourselves are having as we speak. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I see no other further questions, so thank you very much to yourself, Mr. Angus, and Mr. Hustins for joining us this evening and bringing us this update. And we look forward to hearing more in 2013 about your accomplishments and successes. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is Jeanette Pongrantz-Doyle, who we've moved up in the agenda. If she would like to come forward to the podium, please. She has 10 minutes. If I could please have your name and address, and of course, I believe you have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Okay. My name is Jeanette Pongrantz-Doyle, and I do live at 2710 South Forks Road.
Thank you.
I'd just like to start off by first saying thank you very much for listening and hearing me last Tuesday night. It's been clearly nerve-wracking with nobody understanding the impact to our community and being told that we were going to be cut off from all sources of emergency services and with nobody listening. We'll be providing you all with a copy of the presentation from last week, so everybody knows what's been said, as well as 5 community letters you'll be receiving, and a letter of support from Extension Fire Department. I've also put in there a copy of what could be a precedent set for our community and what we are going through, enduring our life turned upside down for a significant amount of time. With life-altering changes created by the City of Nanaimo for the city water improvement only, but having severe impacts on innocent people along the way, with potentially deadly impacts in the end should the chlorine gas tanks ever end up compromised in any way of a forest fire. For those of you who did not see the map, might be a couple, at the RDN, so you can appreciate for yourself the huge concern where anywhere from 30 to 50 forest fires can be endured during a summer. And a couple years ago, there was many forest fires set a couple hundred meters away from our homes. Speaking to the letter from my community, I'd just like to press the fact how catastrophic this is to our community, both directly and indirectly, and definitely not just an inconvenience. I do have further information on the impacts to our community. I can normally go to get our mail at the box at Twilight Way in a 10-minute return trip. What we are enduring for the next 5 months now is anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour or more, because there can be a 20-minute wait, and some have experienced a 30-minute wait in either direction, depending on the timing of the truck switching and the pipes being lowered in. Another neighbor that has come home on the Nanaimo River Road, she was about 1 minute from being home, and prepared for the wait. She was actually told to go back the other way. Her car was too low to the ground, and the road is too rough. She had to go back around 39 kilometers, White Rapids, Chase River, 10th Street, Harewood Mines Road to Nanaimo Lakes, and back up the mountain the other direction. This is how she would have to pick up her mail, by driving down White Rapids to Nanaimo River and then back, as I just described. This could add up to 65 kilometers. So to go and pick up her mail from town, understanding that most of us do not have the option of leaving it in the box because it has been broken into several times. Where could you travel for 65 kilometers? Maybe Cobble Hill, maybe Qualicum, but now for some of us it's to our mailbox and back. We have found out on Thursday that the access will now be provided for each home, which would include an extension fire truck. Thank you very much for that. Huge relief. But I was a little unnerved on Friday after I left the hospital, leaving my husband there, when I got home to a message from an insurance adjuster saying I needed to have a pre-blast inspection done on my home before blasting starts. Yikes. I am close to the maximum that I can take. And please be fully aware, we are all on wells. We have no water out there. And if you're concerned about our homes as we are definitely concerned about our wells, because impacts to ground can take what is a life-saving thing away from us, which most of us have spent tens of thousands of dollars putting in place for our homes. I don't think anyone can say this is not far and beyond what anyone should be expected to endure for any reason, especially for any length of time. Talking to anyone in the city about our situation, I'm continually asked, and you're not getting water for this? Not even fire hydrants is all I can say. We are truly a unique scenario to any other project the city may pursue, and impacts created on people considering we, as Maureen Young put it, did not create not in my backyard scenes at the community input sessions, rather accepted you as a good neighbor and willing to work together and looking out for each other. We did ask about fire hydrants. We asked about water for our future fire hall, guilty, which would benefit both parties if that was available. And we did ask if there was a possibility of potable water for the community, which I understand was sent to the regional district to put a feasibility cost to the community report together. Maybe a reduced rate for hookup might be in line for what our community is going through. There is no one else that could fall under this precedent that would also be taking on the liability of your chlorine gas tanks 400 meters behind our homes. We are just asking that we're just asking to be respected for what you're putting our community through, which is far past a minor inconvenience, and give us at least a fighting chance to fight and snuff out fires with more than a fire truck and a swimming pool with a tanker running back and forth to fill that swimming pool, to hold water to protect our community from chlorine gas tanks behind our homes, and reversing your decision for fire hydrants on South Forks Road at the very least. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pankratz-Doyle, for your presentation. I see Councillor Brennan and Councillor Greaves with a question.
I actually don't have a question for the delegation.
Councillor, would you like to make a...
I'd move to receive the delegation.
Thank you.
For those of you who haven't seen the pictures, they are here if you want to see them.
I believe we've seen them.
Fred hasn't.
I know.
Fred and Bill, yes.
Patch over there.
Fred hasn't seen Fred and Bill.
Yeah.
This is our road conditions. Yeah, it's fine. Hold up.
So,
just go the way it is.
thank you. So we can just hold that for now if you wish. A motion to receive the delegation. All in favor? Carried. Is it appropriate for us to deal with this matter now? I believe that Councillor Anderson has a motion that he'd like to make.
Had some questions before.
Oh, my apologies. I didn't realize you had any questions. I thought you wished to just receive the delegation.
No, I have questions for staff.
Questions for staff. Thank you. So, Councillor, I'm sorry you've been taken off, but I'll let you speak. Then Councillor Greaves, Anderson, and Johnstone.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like a comment from staff on the statement that that neighborhood has been cut off from all emergency services. Can you comment on that for me, please? It's quite alarming.
Your Worship, I can't speak for the delegation, but I assume she's making reference to the fact that there are delays on the road because of the construction as well. Some of the driveways, most of the driveways have to be crossed, and so there is periods where the driveways are dug out. We are endeavoring to provide alternate access at all times, but there certainly is periods where people are affected by the construction schedule.
Can I ask if we have had discussions then with any emergency services, how they might respond to an emergency there if there's no driveway? Not directly?
No, staff haven't. I'm not sure whether the contractor has, but I'm not aware that they have.
Okay. So the last question I'll ask is, there's been a suggestion that the gas tanks are very dangerous to the neighborhood, and could I get a comment on that, please?
Mr. Chair, the purification or the disinfection of the water after the treatment plant will be accomplished by chlorine gas, and it's similar to what we use now. The structure that the chlorine gas tanks will be held in is secure, it's locked, it's sealed, and it has everything from alarms as well as a scrubber should the very unlikely event of a leak occur.
Thank you.
That's all, Councillor Brennan?
Yes.
Thank you. Given the fact that you've been received as a delegation, at the conclusion of the questions, if you would like to make a final comment or statement, I will grant you that privilege. But is Councillor Greaves?
Regarding the access, when we were originally...
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Just at the conclusion, once we're finished the question period, then if you wish to make any comment that was potentially not addressed, we'll allow that to take place. Yep. Councillor Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having seen this come up on our agenda, I'm pleased that you made your presentation to the regional district, and we decided to send this letter to us, the council, so I could gather my thoughts on this issue. Up until that time, I hadn't really formed my opinions. I tried to drive out to South Forks Road on Friday, and last Friday on Nanaimo Lakes Road, and the road was closed because of construction, just past the number 1 reservoir. Sorry. I then turned around and went down 7th Street to Nanaimo Lakes Road that way, and to get to the pipeline on South Forks Road, your road. The pipeline follows the road and appears to cut through every driveway on its way. Similar to the natural gas company did to my road about 13 years ago. And that was a real mess and a real inconvenience as well. But not as much as yours, I can well imagine. It was a few short hours before my driveway was usable again. My street remained a mess. I think your street will remain a mess for quite a while, although I did see them start asphalting the road at the end towards Nanaimo River Road. They were already starting to do that. There was a flag person. I had to sit there for about 20 minutes. They said it was about a 25-minute wait. And so I sat there, and there was a flag person, so I decided I would talk to her about this issue and ask if there was any issues with ambulance or fire department. And they said as soon as they heard the ambulance or the sirens, they would immediately clear the road. And immediately, I don't know how fast immediately would be to them, but they said immediately would be pretty quick, because I think they can hear the sirens for quite a distance in your area. And I've been in that situation as well with flag people, and they really do a very good job of clearing the road. I'm sure both the ambulance and the Extension Fire Department know the situation, and they've planned it thoroughly, and they know what is about to happen. Now, the chlorine gas tanks, as has been explained by Mr. Sims, would be contained in an isolated room, sprinkler protected, in an area around the water treatment plant would be cleared for a great distance, so any forest, bush, or grass fire would not be a threat, much like around a hydro station or substation. So that fear is really unrealistic. And he's mentioned scrubbers as well, in case the toxic gases escaped. Chlorine gas is not flammable. It is an oxidizer. It will support combustion. It's not like propane. It's not like butane. So that fear is, again, a little extreme. I did find there were 2 ways out from the area, South Forks Road to 7th or Nanaimo Lakes Road on a good day. Or if you're on the other side of the construction, you could take South Forks to Nanaimo Road to Extension to Cranberry Avenue. So it's not like you were landlocked. I'm wondering if your area has considered water towers. I've seen them in many places for firefighting, and you can use groundwater and pump it up to the tower, and the fire trucks can use that water, or you can even supply fire hydrants with that, depending on how high the tower is and what the volume of water is in the water tanks. Anyway, for all of the above reasons, the mess, the mud, the bumpiness, the inconvenience of waiting for the flag person up to 25 minutes, the unrealistic fears, in my opinion, for fearing fire near the water treatment plant, it all really seems to boil down to the fact that the City of Nanaimo has inconvenienced the 15 residents, and in return, you would like the City of Nanaimo to compensate you for that, to supply you with water, or water to the hydrants. I don't know how many hydrants are needed. I know there's going to be a motion coming up, so I'll leave after having said all of that, I'll leave my comments until I hear what the motion is going to be, but I still have an open mind. It's a serious issue, no question about it, and I feel sorry for you. And that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Jeanette, for your presentation. Just to answer or clarify some concerns brought up by my colleagues, Councillor Brennan, Ms. Pongrantz-Doyle sent a letter to Council on November 19th, or actually an email, addressing her concerns about how the entire her street would be cut off from all access for fire trucks, ambulance, emergency preparedness, and other help. At that point in time, I sent an email to our city manager, who then went and looked into the issue. I followed up with him the following day, and they spoke to the contractor, who then said that they would provide access. So what she's talking about is, yeah, I know, and I'm just reminding you in case you've forgotten. Well, it seems that you did forget. So anyways, so then it was, they spoke to the contractor and they provided the access so that the residents in that area could get emergency preparedness and other services to them. And Councillor Greaves, in regards to natural gas, when they obstructed your access, you were getting a benefit out of that. In this case, though, those residents are not getting anything other than disruption. But anyways, I will make a motion in regards to this issue. As you see in the correspondence, Chairman Joe Stanhope of the Regional District sent us a letter, and so I'll make a motion that staff investigate opportunities with the Regional District of Nanaimo to provide fire hydrants to the residents of South Forks at no cost impact to the city. That would provide the dual benefit of improved fire protection for residents and the new water treatment facility.
Second motion.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson and Councillor Kipp. Is there any discussion on the motion?
If I may just clarify. There was some concerns earlier about the cost impacts to Nanaimo taxpayers. As it says in the letter from Chairman Stanhope, that there is a possibility that the regional district would be able to fund this without impact to Nanaimo residents. So I've made the motion that we should investigate this with their staff and see whether or not they can provide the fire hydrants at the cost to the regional district.
Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Anderson. I have Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kipp, Councillor Greaves, and Councillor McKay.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Prior to the motion being made, I was going to direct a question to staff, if I may.
Absolutely, as long as it's in relation to the motion that's on the floor.
It is. How long is the project from beginning to end? How long do you think the area will be under this duress?
Mr. Chair, the project, in its entirety, will last about 5 months. It'll be about late March or early April before the road is able to be repaved. Some of that work However, the trenching of the pipes will be about 3 months until we get off the road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you very much. With relation to this, the Extension Fire Department thinks it's a phenomenal idea. Out in that area, it's a volunteer fire department. They could come from either side of the road currently. Man, that'd be a long drive to a fire, 37 minutes around in a loop. With regard to this, and there's talk of the chlorine, through the staff, who's our chlor rep, and how far away is a response, or what is our watershed people trained to for a chlorine spill? That's a 1-tonner out there, or a 2-tonner?
Mr. Chair, there'll be a series of 1-ton containers of chlorine, and it's pretty standard practice in the industry. Our operators are all trained in chlorine response, so it's once an alarm is heard, if there's nobody already on site at the plant, which will be staffed, then an overnight response, say, would be in the order of 20 minutes. So we also have backup with Connexus at Harmac as well.
So if I can clarify that, our people are trained to awareness level, operations level, technician levels?
To repair and emergency response.
Okay, thank you. So I believe that the forest fire risk, with the number of fires we saw, and we knew there was somebody out lighting fires in that area over the last couple of years. We couldn't catch them. They got to catch them with the match on. This is just a no-brainer. It's different than the gas service because, as was said, the gas service gives people the ability to hook up to gas. I'm still of the mindset when we're running through there, like Extension, we ran our water through. Extension years ago, Extension got city water. This has been a huge disruption, and water is we're a blue community where water is a human right. Just stopping at fire hydrants to me is really not enough, but I really support this motion as it goes forward.
Thank you, Councillor Kipp. Councillor Greaves, and then Councillor McKay, and then Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to correct my learned friend, Councillor Anderson. I asked for gas to be supplied into my house, and I phoned the gas company, and they said it wasn't forthcoming, so I bought myself a propane tank, and then the next year they supplied my street with gas. So I don't have natural gas. I'm still on propane, so it did not benefit me. Just a little correction.
If I may, if we could stay on topic and please deal strictly with the motion, please. Thank you. Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question to staff. Can you tell me if it were to go forward, and if we were to study this issue of getting fire capability out there, how much work would it be, and would it be possible to retrofit water lines in afterwards?
Your Worship, the opportunity exists now. If Council directed that, I think they're looking for 2 or 3 fire hydrants, they could be done while the trenching is open.
I'm speaking of domestic water.
Oh, well, Your Worship, I don't think there is an opportunity to provide domestic water. As pointed out by the regional district, the residents would have to form some sort of local improvement area, and they would have to take on the costs of distributing the water, and I don't believe that that question has been posed. I think what we're talking about here is the provision of a few fire hydrants, and it's my understanding that those could be funded through the local area fire improvement area.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. And Councillor Patchy. Councillor Patchy, please.
To staff as well, if I may. I've heard 2 different things. I've heard cost sharing, and I've heard no cost to Nanaimo taxpayers. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, that's up to Council. What I think that I've heard from the Council members is that there's some interest in providing fire hydrants, assuming that they're not paid for by Nanaimo taxpayers, but that's just my presumption based on what I'm hearing. I think that was the motion. But Council can make that determination if Council wants to pay for fire hydrants at the cost of City of Nanaimo users of water. That's your prerogative.
Follow up, please, if I may.
Absolutely.
Could staff explain to me how many fire hydrants are in play here, and what is the cost of?
I believe there's either 2 or 3, and the cost is, I believe, $4,000 each.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I would just let my colleague know that it's clear in my motion that there should be no cost impact to the city taxpayers.
Thank you. Is there any other first-time speakers? And there being none, I will call the question. All in favor? Motion passes. Carried. Thank you very much. It passed. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yes. Tonight? Yeah?
Your Worship, just to clarify, there is a condition that the regional district, which means the local citizens, would have to pay the cost.
Thank you. That concludes the presentations. We move to the mayor's report, and most recently in our city, we've experienced some four, in fact, serious pedestrian motorist injuries, and two resulting in very unfortunate deaths, and our condolences go to the families of those impacted. Right now, I would just like to introduce our General Manager of Community Services and Protection, Mr. Ted Swaby, to introduce a joint effort by our RCMP and our Citizens on Patrol in the city of Nanaimo to work toward reducing and, in fact, eliminating any future pedestrian incidents. Mr. Swaby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, unfortunately, in the past 3 weeks, we've experienced 4 collisions, which resulted in 2 deaths between pedestrians, cyclists, and automobiles. And what we learned from this was not only the bad weather, but the darkness and the lack of reflective gear played a part in these tragedies. So what the RCMP is committed to doing, Mr. Chairman, is ensuring that our highways and streets are as safe as possible. And we'd like to initiate a program where we purchase through the Community Policing Fund as many of these reflective gear as we can, both for bicycles and for armbands, and that we'll be distributing those on the streets through the general duty police officers where they come across situations that would warrant educating cyclists and pedestrians at night who aren't wearing them and who are not visible. Following that, the RCMP will lead an education program through various working groups in the community, and this will be led by Constable Gary O'Brien and Corporal Norm Smith, and we'll provide some more information about this on our website and through media releases and social media when this is up and going. But we wanted to bring it to the attention of the community as soon as we can, especially during the holiday season, that it's everybody's responsibility to try and drive safe and pay attention to pedestrians and cyclists on the road during the winter months when it's dark and stormy. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Swaby. Certainly important for all of us as motorists as well, in view of the limited visibility and the daylight saving time, et cetera. And many more people on the streets shopping and in the Christmas spirit. So please drive carefully. There's no items under administration. We move to community safety and development. Right now, it gives me, I'd like to introduce Andrew Tucker, our Director of Planning, to provide a presentation regarding our Community Sustainability Action Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight I'm introducing for Council the results of many years of work on Community Sustainability Action Plan. This is work that has been undertaken by both community stakeholders with support of BC Hydro, by the Advisory Committee on Environmental Sustainability, and on staff from various departments in the city. This all began for the city back about 5 years ago in September of 2007 when Council adopted a corporate energy and emissions plan. What that plan was looking at was what we as the city generate by way of greenhouse gases and what we can do to reduce our impact and save energy and also save money. Tonight, what I'm talking about is what the rest of the community and their impact in terms of release of greenhouse gases and their use of energy. And this came about as a result of Bill 27, which was introduced in the legislature in 2008. And what Bill 27 was talking about was for each community, through their official community plan, to set a target level by which we'd reduce greenhouse gas emissions. At that time, we were already 2 years into our official community plan review, and Plan Nanaimo was adopted in August of that year. Plan Nanaimo is developed on the basis of sustainability principles. So we talk about the 4 pillars of sustainability within Plan Nanaimo. That's protection of the environment, economic viability, social equity, and cultural vitality. And those principles of sustainability are built into Plan Nanaimo. As a result of Bill 27, we brought forward amendments in 2010, which were to set targets. And I apologize for the size of the font here. This is a shot from Plan Nanaimo. But the first arrow points to the targets that we set back in 2010. And what we said at that point was we were going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 33% below 2007 levels by 2020, and to reduce them further by 80% by 2050. And these were very aggressive goals. They were the provincial goals at the time, and admittedly were aspirational goals. The second arrow points to another commitment made in Plan Nanaimo, is that we would bring forward a sustainability action plan that would capture some of the steps we would need to take to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Moving forward, we come to the Council's strategic plan just recently adopted. And within that strategic plan is the ongoing commitment to sustainability, and it's represented within the strategic plan by the 4 pillars that I mentioned earlier. So this is where we are tonight, which is to introduce a community sustainability action plan. As I said, this is a result of many years' work, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank BC Hydro for their contribution to the plan. We went out and hired a consultant who conducted a study of how we use our energy and what emissions those generate. We engaged community stakeholders in the process and looked at our major employers and other people who are generating those greenhouse gases, and we undertook what's called the Community Energy and Emissions Study, CEES, which was completed in November of last year. What that study was a technical study of the use of energy in the community and the volume of greenhouse gases. Since that was released, we have followed up with further involvement of our stakeholders and preparation of a draft plan. That was then reviewed over this past summer and was taken to ACES last month. And at the end of this road, we come to where we are tonight, which is to introduce it and present it to Council for your endorsement. So the Community Energy and Emissions Study, as I said earlier, funded by BC Hydro, Stantec Consulting was the firm that prepared the study for us. And I should say that this is a study that used a methodology that has been used throughout BC, and 35 communities across the province have in fact followed the same methodology to arrive at their targets. I won't summarize that very technical document, but I'd like to draw your attention to the little bullseye up on the left-hand side, which is the direction for the targets. And you'll see that what came out of that CEES, the Community Energy and Emissions Study, was to reduce targets. Our current target, what we adopted in 2010, as I said earlier, was to reduce greenhouse gases by a third below 2007 levels by 2020 and by 80% by 2050. What we're recommending to Council tonight is to reduce those reduction targets, so to reduce the amount we're going to reduce emissions by to what are considered more realistic levels following the studies that have been done to date. It's to reduce it to 3% by 2020 and 39% by 2050. How we'll get there is set out in the Community Sustainability Action Plan, and this is the document which was attached electronically to the agenda. It's available on the city's website and outlines many steps to arrive at those reduced goals. But these goals rely on community partnerships, and that again is one of the factors in the Council's strategic plan, is building community partnerships. We're looking at major employers, how they can help us. Can the regional district, through its transit operations and its regional waste facilities, both liquid waste and solid waste activities, can the university with its ridership and students going to and from the university, and the heat generated by the buildings up on campus. Can VIHA, which is one of our major employers, generate fewer trips to and from the hospital? And of course our development industry, which represents about a quarter of our economy. So these are all partners that we're trying to help us meet these goals. So within the plan, and I'm not going to go into all of these details, there are 4 theme areas: land use and transportation, buildings, energy, and solid waste. And then within those, we have a variety of strategies that will help us reach these goals. Within each of those, going down to a further level of detail, we have a variety of tools that we can use. Education and outreach, financial incentives and non-financial incentives, and finally regulation, which is the not the carrots but the stick approach. So there are a variety of approaches that are put forward in this plan, and through working with the community and continuing to approach the various aspects of energy usage and emissions, we hope to move forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tucker. I see Councillor Patchy. We have 2 committee recommendations. So, Councillor Patchy, you are on.
You can move recommendations?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
You can if you like, and I'll like to speak after this.
Moved by Councillor Kipp, second by Councillor Brennan. Any discussion? And of course, Councillor Patchy would like to speak to this.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Disappointing as this news is, for many reasons. The first question I have for you is that you say that 35 communities have used the same methodology. Can you shed some light as to what the results were in those 35 communities?
What I'm led to understand is that in other communities as well, the targets are being recommended to be recalibrated and brought down into more realistic levels.
Okay. Do we have the province's reaction to this at this point?
Not at this point, no.
And finally, if I may, Mr. Chair, is there's a connection between reducing greenhouse gases and getting grant money in some instances, is there not?
That was initially our belief, but we have since heard that, or at least we have not seen any direct connection between grant funding and these targets.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In reducing these gas emissions, will this impact the carbon tax credits?
No, Your Worship, or Acting Mayor Bestwick. It doesn't affect the carbon tax credit.
It doesn't affect it in any. We'd still receive the same.
The reason is because what this presentation is talking about is carbon emissions, not from the city corporate, but from the rest of the community. We only get money refunded from carbon tax based on our own emissions.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. I support the motion to move forward for the Sustainability Action Plan. It is going to cause some initial sort of concern for people, but things are changing dynamically. I believe that the carbon neutrality we tried to reach before was almost impossible to get to those levels. I think this is a good step forward on meeting some and making some achievable targets. Part of me, though, is that my concern is that when you talk about carbon credits, is that we have to give somebody else money. I'd prefer to do the regional district model where we keep the carbon credits instead of paying someone like Pacific Carbon Trust. We keep the money locally, and we pushed for that for a while now. So I like the motions that are on the floor. And if Councillor Brennan would like to move it and I would second it, I'd appreciate that too. Thank you.
Thank you, and I believe I see Councillor Brennan wishing to comment. Do you have?
I just wanted to comment that I believe that the City of Nanaimo is involved in the regional district. Yes, so it isn't going out to a third party, so to speak. If you would like me to make this motion, I can.
Well, the motion's been made by Councillor Kipp and seconded by...
You know what, Councillor Kipp, I'm not invested at all in making the motion. I'm happy to just have the question called.
Thank you. Before we call the question, I'll just note that there's a large volume of material on this topic on the Community Sustainability Action Plan, and it is available electronically on our website. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is development permit number DP 000804 at 2920 Robson Road. The staff recommendation is that council issue development permit DP 000804 at 2920 Robson Road with 3 variances. A watercourse setback variance of 15 meters. B, a required side yard variance of 1.5 meters. And a required front yard variance of 0.93 meters. What is your pleasure? Oh, I see Councillor Patchy is...
Maybe somebody wants to move it first. Well, I can move it together on the table if you like. And then I'd like to speak to it.
Moved by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Patchy, and Councillor Patchy is first speaking.
Thank you. Well, this is one of the many requests that we have been getting over the years in order to deal with setbacks on riparian areas. And I have to be really honest with you that this one is even more disappointing to me than any of the others that I have seen in the last 4 years. And while I'm aware that I believe it was 2002, 10 years ago, the setback was reduced by a different council of the day from 15 to, I believe, 3 meters, if I'm correct. I don't think that would have happened if that had come to us now because of the specific location. This may be a tributary that has no name to Departure Creek, but as a resident of Departure Bay, I cannot even begin to tell you how important that creek is to all of us. All of the work, all of the community effort that has gone into trying to restore Departure Creek to its natural state as far as fisheries is concerned. We have cut trout in there now. 2 years ago, the return of the pinks was absolutely phenomenal. And you know, if nothing else, the engineer's report notwithstanding, this is being considered as, well, how shall I put it, a psychological slap in the face of those people who have been working so very, very hard to make sure that Departure Creek gets back to what it used to be. There's not a hair on my head that would consider voting in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patchy. Councillor Greaves, Councillor Kipp, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have to echo what Councillor Patchy said. Maybe it's because I'm sitting beside Councillor Kipp, he's rubbing off on me, but this applicant already received a 12-meter setback for a house, so they know that there's setbacks and they know the process. He or she went ahead anyway and built, even though they're sheds, built them asking for forgiveness rather than asking for permission because of a complaint. So I will be not voting in favor of this recommendation as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Graves, Councillor Brennan, and then Councillor Kipp. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to support this either, and it is for the same reasons that Councillor Paggi and Councillor Grieve have indicated. The neighbourhood has spent an enormous amount of time working on that on Woodstream, and it's very important to the neighbourhood, and for their work to be not taken into account, I think that they feel that their work isn't being taken into account. Whether that's true or not, it's certainly the perception and the sense that they have. So, you know, there's a suggestion that it's just a shed. Well, in fact, it's just a shed. Move it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. I will defer to Councillor Johnston because you have spoken, Councillor Kipp, so I'll allow Councillor Johnston to speak first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had two reports from the consultant as well as the Ministry of Environment, and they both concluded that the setbacks will not affect the watercourse. Is this or is it not a fish-bearing creek? I've heard both, and I understand that there's no possibility for water to come that far upstream.
Departure Creek is a fish-bearing stream. The unnamed tributary that runs along the east side of the lot is not believed to be a fish-bearing stream.
It's not believed to be a fish-bearing stream?
The unnamed tributary, that's correct.
Mr. Chairman, I've had an opportunity to walk that beautiful park with Councillor Paggi, and it's an amazingly beautiful area, very natural, and I would really like to see it kept that way, even though it's been concluded by the consultants that it will not affect the watercourse. It's whenever we allow these riparian setbacks, it gives me some cause for concern as well, and my colleague will be speaking tonight about the possibility of putting together a task force to study this issue, and at this point in time I don't think I'm prepared to support this request.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson, and I just wish to remind all of us that we're only dealing with the one lot, and that's 2920 Robson Road. Councillor Kipp. You are.
Sorry, thank you. This is an interesting one because the 15-meter setbacks came in the late 90s, and that's when originally Council stepped forward and put a standard in that the province had adopted later and then has now started to reduce. I know we are looking, and I understand ACES is looking at this in the future, some of the riparian setbacks.
ACES has expressed concern that there's been a large number of variations to the riparian setback.
Yeah, I guess the toughest one for me is we've been making a few of them, and I don't really have an accounting of how many we've done in the last while. But I do know that staff has done some look at this one. It's the distance. I guess the confusing thing with all of these is the distance from the top edge of the bank and up to where the setback is, and that's the toughest one to determine from a development perspective and how close that development is. I know back in 2002 the council was very aware of the riparian setbacks in the zone, and to have it reduced then, I know they had studied it at that point and looked at reducing it to 3 meters because that's the distance to that top of bank. Can staff answer me how far from that shed, top edge of the bank, to the top edge of the bank? What's the distance from one of the sheds?
Your Worship, as Mr. Tucker is looking, if you're talking about the distance, sort of as the bird flies, it's about 100 feet, I would say over 100 feet. From the top of the bank, of course, it's 0, but this is quite a large ravine, and the aquatic, I should mention the aquatic setback is not an exact science by any means, and each property is individual in terms of its attributes of how it might or might not meet the province's regulation, and that's why it's very important that they have a professional biologist involved in the application to determine the health of the riparian area. So this one is quite large and quite healthy.
If I can continue, this is similar to the one at Westwood Lake Road that had the very steep embankment. That was a variance too. I mean, I'm saying it's similar that it's the water level is down, way down below where that is. The one concern I do have though with it, so just a shed, it could have gasoline in it, it could have batteries in it, it could have a whole bunch of stuff in that just shed. And if it's on the edge and can be tumbled down the bank, that's a concern. What happens if we don't pass this tonight? Is it then they're removed and moved?
Your Worship, if council is not interested in accepting the variance, then we would start enforcement action to have them removed.
Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you. I'm not certain, Councillor Brennan, if you are still on the speakers list. No. Councillor McKay, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've looked at this over and over and over again, and I share some of the concerns of my colleagues on council relative to the number of variances that we seem to be getting. However, each one of them we're looking at individually, and I know there's some concerns that the federal government are going to be downloading the responsibility of these sorts of things with the destruction of the Fisheries Act, etc., and I get that. This one here, the fellow's got a fenced yard, I understand. Wanted to put a couple of sheds inside his fenced yard, thought it was going to be okay. Turns out it's not. These are not building permit buildings, they're simply garden sheds, and I can't get if they had gasoline because they had a lawnmower in them, if it was 10 feet one way or the other, how it would make that much of a difference. I really don't get it. I have no issue with this variance as far as I'm concerned, and I'm going to be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our staff have given us a recommendation that we support the variances. I am not a biologist. I'm not a riparian area expert, and I don't know if there's anyone else on council who is, but the Ministry of the Environment has supported this. The consultant who did this as well has said that it's fine to go ahead with this. I believe that as a local government, we're here to make evidence-based policy, and I don't think any other member of council has given me reason to believe why we should not accept these recommendations when we have two groups that have said that these will work. So I will be supporting the staff recommendation on the variances.
Thank you. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I wish that the Ministry of whatever had walked past that spot where the connection is between this particular property and Departure Creek. I'd venture to say it's less than 100 feet, and I would also say that because there's a steepness from this property going down into Woodstream Park, that is really a topographical area that exacerbates what I'm trying to prevent. Just for the record to staff, if I may, Mr. Chair, about 2 years ago, this city paid for the removal of some pretty heavy concrete construction at the end of Departure Creek. Refresh my memory, how much did we pay for that?
I don't think there's anybody here that recalls precisely.
I seem to recall something like $20,000. In any case, more than the value of a shed. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no more discussion, I will just call the question on the staff's recommendation and motion that council issue development permit number DP 000804 at 2920 Robson Road with 3 variances. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. We'll move into 8C, Development Variance Permit DBP 0204 2609 Rosstown Road.
Council directs staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for development variance permit number DBP 00204 at 2609 Rosstown Road.
Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Johnston. Is there any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move into 8D, Development Variance Permit DBP 00206 3501 Uplands Drive.
Council directs staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for development variance permit number DVP00206 at 3501 Uplands Drive that would allow for placement of a heat pump at the side of the principal building.
That's moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Johnstone. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my apologies, Councillor Grace.
Sorry. No, I'm opposed to this recommendation. It should be around the back. Lots of room. This person's been in business for a number of years. There's no other reason other than, oops, I forgot. So no, I think this heat pump should be moved around the back and not left to the side.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp is next. I'll just, if I may, just ask staff if the commentary indeed is accurate, that there's, from Councillor Greaves, that there is ample room on the side and it was just simply a mistake in its placement.
Yes, Acting Mayor Bestwick, the site plan is shown on page 43. It's a very large lot, and there is ample room on the lot to locate the heat pump at the rear of the building.
Thank you, Councillor Kipp, Councillor McKay, Councillor Johnstone.
Yeah, I'm opposed to side placements of them. The one concern I have too is the neighboring lot, lot 47, has a 15-meter space in between currently, but the person could fill that space in. We've had concerns with locations of these heat pumps. We set a bylaw in place. This one has tons of room at the back. I can't support it at this time.
Thank you, Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to staff. This is the second or third that we've seen in the matter of 3 to 4 months, if I recall. And I understand and I get what the bylaw was intended to do, but we have situations such as this where I can't see a need to do that, particularly with the technology of heat pumps. They're getting quieter, they're getting more efficient, and I would like to know whether or not we should perhaps put forward some further recommendations to the bylaw. Would that help with instructions and guidelines to staff on where we can go with these sorts of things, so that each one of them doesn't require a development variance permit at $750 a pop? Would that be helpful?
Your Worship, Mr. Chairman, what we did when Council implemented the regulations is we suggested that we should evaluate over the course of a year or two how it's working, and then come back with some recommendations on how it's working. And that would be something that the Development Process Review Committee, as an example, would look at once we get enough data that we can come back. I think we probably have another half year or a year, another summer season to go before we'll have enough data to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that we have Councillor Johnstone next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no grievance with this variance request at all. The builder, the owner of the home, has spoken with the neighbors. They have no problem at all. It's an energy efficient model, very low vibration, 15 meters from his side yard to the neighbor's yard, and 7 meters from the side yard to his own home. So we're looking at 22 meters, and there'll be absolutely no sound or noise at all, Mr. Chairman, so I can't. The gentleman said that it would be almost impossible to move it at this point in time, and at a very high cost, so I will be supporting it.
Thank you. There are no other speakers. I just had one question for staff, and that would be what the cost implications for the homeowner to relocate at this time.
Your Worship, all we know is what the applicant has said, that it would be very expensive. I don't think we have any more information unless you do at this time. No.
Thank you. So there being no other speakers, I'll call the question on the motion that Council directs staff to proceed with the required statutory notification for development variance permit 206 at 3501 Uplands Drive that would allow for placement of a heat pump at the side of the principal building. My apologies, I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it was just to clarify that the motion is related to the statutory notification, but not the issuance of the permit at this time.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item is 8E on page 3, Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704. Is there any, we have two items, one for 657 Kennedy Street, household furniture and appliances, and one, the second, 34 Nickel Street, of graffiti. Is there anybody in attendance who wishes to speak to either of these items for those addresses? There being none, do I hear a motion?
I move that council by resolution instruct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting properties
listed below. Oh, I'm on the wrong one, sorry. That council, pursuant to Property Maintenance Bylaw 1990, number 3704, direct the owners of the following properties to remove the materials as listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agents at the owner's cost. And that would be 1 and 2, which is 657 Kennedy Street and 34 Nickel Street.
Moved Councillor Anderson, seconded Councillor Kipp. Call the question. All in favor? Carried. 8F, unresolved building deficiencies. Notice on title, section 57. We have 4 properties. One at 202 Derby Place, one at 1700 Extension Road, one at 36 4th Street, and one at 115 Strickland Street. Is there anyone in attendance wishing to speak with respect to unresolved building deficiencies for any of the properties listed below?
Move that council by resolution instruct the
corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice respecting the properties listed below at the Land, Title and Service Authority of British Columbia under section 57 of the Community Charter.
Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Johnstone. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8G. We come to 4-member response with respect to Nanaimo Fire Services, and the staff's recommendation is that council receive the report regarding 4-member response for Nanaimo Fire Services.
Move staff's recommendation.
The motion moved by Councillor Johnstone and seconded by Councillor Anderson. I have Councillor Brennan and Councillor Kipp on the speaking list.
Yes, I want to be certain that when this report comes back to us, that there will be that it will include consideration of 4-member engines in addition to the question of 4-member response, because as we all know, those are 2 different things. So just want to, can I have that confirmed from staff that the report will provide discussion on that issue?
Acting Mayor Bestwick, yes. Thank you. Absolutely. That's critical that we get a distinction between the 2 issues. I know our colleagues are in the audience today will also be including the union in this to make sure that we get their perspective on the issue. And yes, we will be doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Kipp.
Well, one of my concerns was the 4-man response versus 4-man engine argument. My biggest concern is safety to house fires or structure fires that involve people, like high-density shelters and those things. So it's really important that that's addressed in the report for me, too. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other speakers. I just have one question, if I may, please. And it indicates will be provided to an open regular meeting. Is there timing on the open regular meeting that the report will be presented?
Staff at this point don't have an exact time. We'll do our best to get it here as soon as possible, but I don't have an exact time.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. No more question, or there's no more discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We go to 8H at the bottom of the page. New charges proposed by Canada Post. We have a committee recommendation that has come forward from the Development Process Review Committee as it relates to Canada Post implementing a fee for development for Canada Post boxes. The recommendation, I will defer to Councillor McKay or Councillor Kipp, who are on the DPRC committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move the committee recommendation that Council write a letter to Canada Post about the displeasure of this new one-time installation fee to developers to install and activate all community mailboxes and addresses in new developments, and further, that this message be distributed to both the Union of BC Municipalities and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
Moved by Councillor McKay and seconded by Councillor Kipp. Any further discussion? Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I would just ask that when the letter is written, that we use a stronger language than displeasure, that we use language like object, serious concerns, those kinds of words, rather than just displeasure. I think we should be fairly strong on that.
I'm sure then that our staff are willing to accept that without an amendment. Call the question, or sorry, is all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We now move over to page 4. This is item I, which is one of the recommendations has been pulled. That was number 1. However, approval of 60-year lease to Pacific Housing Advisory Association for supportive housing located at 6025 Uplands Drive.
We move to authorize staff to publish the statutory public notice of disposition as required under Section 24 and Section 26 of the Community Charter.
That is moved by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Brennan. Any discussion? Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this bullet number 2, should that not read to publish the statutory public notice of intended or proposed disposition according to the Community Charter?
I think that's correct.
Good. In that case, I would move that we amend number 2 to include that.
And if I understand that correctly, then to insert proposed disposition.
Yeah, I believe that Councillor Padgett is correct on the intent. I'm just cautious about changing the wording because I believe it is termed a notice of disposition, and I want to make sure. I think the motion here needs to be adopted as it is, so that the reference to the charter is not misinterpreted. So I respect what you're saying. I think that is the intent, but it is called a notice of disposition.
Good enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other speakers or discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We move into corporate services, which is 9A. I will ask our General Manager, CAO, Mr. Al Kenning, to introduce 9A and beyond, please.
Acting Mayor Bestwick, yes. Some months ago, Council indicated that it had tentatively agreed to enter into a lease agreement with the Nanaimo and District Museum to make the old Centennial Museum building, the lower floor, available to them on a long-term lease. Under the procedures that we're required to follow, there's a procedure where we're required to attain the assent of the electors because this is property that's located in a dedicated park. So the assent of the electors was achieved through an alternate approval process, and we can now advise that that was a successful process. Therefore, staff are recommending that Council receive the report about the process and then proceed to adopt or to give proceed with readings of the bylaw to authorize the lease agreement be adopted, actually.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kenning. Do I have a mover of the recommendation?
Staff recommendation.
Moved Councillor Johnstone and seconded by Councillor Patchy. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. and then we'll do the bylaw at this point in time, Mr. Kenny?
That's correct. Please.
Shall I read it, or is it necessary?
I can read it. This bylaw is that the Centennial Museum Building, brackets Piper Park, Nanaimo and District Museum Society Lease Agreement Bylaw number 2012, number 7158, which is a bylaw to authorize the lease agreement for a portion of the Centennial Museum Building at Piper Park to the Nanaimo and District Museum Society, close bracket, be adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny.
Move staff's recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Johnson and seconded by Councillor Kipp. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
The next item, Acting Mayor Bestwick, is a similar process that was followed for renting out the upper floor of the Centennial Museum Building, which is to the Vancouver Island Military Museum. And again, this alternate approval process was successful, and so I'm recommending that Council receive the report that advises Council of this successful process.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Kipp, seconded Councillor McKay. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried.
And next, Your Worship, I'd recommend that Council adopt Centennial Museum Building, bracket Piper Park, bracket Vancouver Island Military Museum Society Lease Agreement Bylaw number 2012, or Bylaw 2012 number 7138, which is a bylaw to authorize the lease agreement for a portion of the Centennial Museum Building at Piper Park to the Vancouver Island Military Museum Society.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor McKay again. Any discussion? Question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The next item, Acting Mayor Bestwick, is an adjustment to the limits for water and sewer user fee subsidies. The City of Nanaimo currently allows low-income seniors to benefit from reduced sewer and water user rates, but the benefit limits need to be raised on occasion because it's based on the minimum incomes provided through old age pension and guaranteed income security, so that as those creep up, our limits become too low. So staff are recommending that these limits be increased to keep pace with the minimum incomes that seniors receive. So staff recommend that Council receive the report that outlines this information and then proceeds to give first three readings to the bylaws.
Motion moved by Councillor Kipp and seconded by Councillor Greaves. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And you should move first three readings to the user rate subsidy amendment bylaw 2012 number 7095.01. First reading, second reading, and third reading.
This is one at a time, assumedly?
One at a time, please, yes.
Thank you. We can have the same mover and seconder for all three. Moved Councillor Kipp, seconded Councillor Greaves. All in favor of number one? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Number two. Move number two by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Greaves. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And number three, same mover and seconder. I call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item D, we move to a matter of a potential conflict of interest, and
yes, this is the report from staff as a result of inquiries that were received from the public about whether or not there was a conflict of interest that the mayor had experienced on the issue of the DNBIA and its application for funding for the engineering work on the Terminal Avenue geotechnical work. And the purpose of this report is to advise the public that the solicitors have advised that the motions that Council passed are not in jeopardy by warrant of any conflict of interest. So staff recommend that Council receive the report regarding potential conflict of interest.
The Council's wishes, please. Looking for a motion in a second. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We'll move in.
Chairman Bestwick, I'm going to absent myself on the school district discussion on the basis of an apprehension of bias.
Thank you. There's a couple of items coming up here, so keep your ears tuned out there in that lobby. Thank you, Councillor Brennan. So we have item 10A, and this is the School District 68 City of Nanaimo Collaboration Agreement. There is 2 recommendations that Council approve the collaboration agreement between the Board of Education of School District 68 and the City Council of Nanaimo, and authorize the Mayor and Corporate Officer to execute the agreement. What is Council's pleasure?
I'd like to move staff's recommendation.
Moved by Councilor Johnstone, seconded by Councilor Anderson. Is there any discussion? There being none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we go over to page 6, which brings us to item B, School District 68 Community Connections Grant, request for council resolution. Council's wishes.
The council support School District 68 Community Connections Grant application.
So moved by Councilor Kipp, seconded by Councilor Anderson. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We'll ask for Councilor Brennan to, I think she can come back.
We'll move the receipt of the correspondence. We have to move the receipt.
I'm sorry, do we need to move the receipt of the correspondence that's embedded in the staff's recommendation? Or?
It's not necessarily there, but it is. There's nothing wrong with doing it either. It's at your pleasure.
Shall we ask Councilor Brennan to leave the room while we vote? Sorry, I know you got a bad knee. Sorry.
Move receipt of correspondence from Chair Jamie Brennan.
Moved by Councilor Kipp, seconded by Councilor Johnstone. Call the all in favor.
The chair will get out of the chair.
Come on back. We go to item C, which is Nanaimo Center Stage 25 Victoria Road. What is council's wishes?
I'd like to move staff's recommendation that council directs staff to include this matter in consideration during the 2013-2017 budget process based on other asset management needs and priorities.
Moved by Councilor Johnstone, seconded by Councilor Brennan. Any discussion? Yes, there is. Terrific. Councilor Anderson, Councilor Greaves, Councilor Patrick, Councilor McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion after the vote is taken based on this topic.
We will come back to you once we deal with this item. Thank you. Councilor Greaves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is the correct time to comment or discuss on this because we are considering it during the 2013-17 budget process. But very quickly, I think I'll make it known that it's a heck of a lot of money to fix this place up, and when you add it to the price that we paid for it, I know the importance it is to the theater district. I understand that, I really do, but man, I don't know. Once you start digging into buildings like this to fix them up, I've done renovations and you never know what you're going to find, and it's better off just knocking the darn thing down and starting over.
Yep. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, Councilor Greaves. If I just might remind that the motion is that we direct staff to include this matter for discussion and debate in the 2013-2017 5-year plan, and when we have those deliberations about our budget for 2013. And I might also remind that due to the large volume of information, it's not all contained in the printed materials, but it too is on our city's website and available. So I wish if we could just keep our discussion focused and centered on the motion that's on the floor. Thank you. So, Councillor Patrick, please.
Well, that makes it really difficult for me as the chair of the Cultural Committee of Parks, Rec and Culture. I just want to tell you that we are tomorrow finishing up a really difficult project that we do once a year, which is to allocate grants, operating grants and festival and arts grants. And when I see this amount that this motion wants us to discuss in the budget cycle, I can tell you that is giving me so much trouble that I'm even having now great difficulty to even go that far. I will vote in favor of the motion, but I want to serve notice now that we have to have a lot of discussions about that.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor McKay. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do realize that the numbers we're talking about here represents greater than 1 full percentage point increase in taxation for a 112-year-old building. I cannot support this, and I will not support this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Kipp and Councillor Johnstone.
Well, I'm happy that it's moving forward to the budget discussions and getting entered into infrastructure. One of the concerns I had with this one from the start, although I wasn't on council when it started, was the fact that this is depleting money from our original concept of having the rehearsal hall right over here. And that was one of mine that concerns me, and we're spending up to $1 million on this over a 5-year period. And that concerns me. But to move it forward to our discussions at least gives us an opportunity to review it. We can maybe get some of that information from Parks and Rec more brought up. But it really concerns me because we don't have our rehearsal hall over here.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Kipp, Councillor Johnstone, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am a little disappointed that we have discussed this tonight before we've taken it to the budget process. At any rate, I'm going to defer my remarks until we get to the budget process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chairman Bestwick. I just want to, like Councillor Johnston, I really would like to wait for the budget considerations so that we can look at this in context. But I do want to correct the suggestion that this was purchased in lieu of a rehearsal space for the Port Theatre. That's not correct. And Bruce Halliday, the general manager of the Port Theatre at that time, said that this was for a third purpose, that it was not for the rehearsal hall for the Port Theatre. In fact, at that time, they were proceeding with their own plans, their own they were seeking funding for a rehearsal hall, and rehearsal halls have very specific criteria to be a rehearsal hall. This is actually for small community theater, for experimental theater, for a number of different uses for the community, not the rehearsal hall, and we shouldn't confuse it as such.
Thank you. I have Councillor Kipp and Councillor McKay.
Just a point of clarification, it is my interpretation that this takes money away from those type of projects. I specifically understand it's a small theater. It works in that sort of venue for the amount of things it has, but my point was that I believe it takes money away from our ability to get that rehearsal hall. Thank you. That was my point.
Thank you. Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to remind my colleagues that we've directed staff to do seismic reviews on 49 buildings. We've done 2 so far. We're into it for $23 million. We've got 49 to go, and now we want to talk nearly $1 million for a 112-year-old building that doesn't resemble in any way, shape, or form its original form or character. I don't even want to take it to budget. Thank you.
Well, we do have, thank you. We do have a recommendation, and I respect the comments of my colleagues, and I think that the most opportune thing for us to do is to take it to the budget process and defeat it and or eliminate it at that point in time. And so I will be supporting the recommendation. Just call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed. Councillor McKay. The motion carries. Moving to item 11.
Mr. Chairman, I have a...
I'm sorry, Councillor Anderson, you wish to make another motion?
Yes, I wanted to make a motion in regard to the Nanaimo Centre stage, and the motion is that staff and the Cultural Committee look into alternatives for performance space and offices if the venue were to be liquidated and be brought back to Council during the budget 2013 to 2017 process.
So the motion is, you have the motion, Mr. Howard?
Councillor Anderson, could you repeat it one more time?
That staff and the Cultural Committee look into alternatives for performance space and offices if the Nanaimo Centre stage were to be liquidated and be brought back to Council during budget 2013 to 2017 process.
Do I have a seconder for the motion?
If I can explain why I brought this motion, it's there's already been concerns about spending money on $1 million on this building, and I think if we put it to staff and the Cultural Committee, should Council decide during the 2013 budget process that we don't want the building anymore, we will have the alternatives at that time to say, well, what can we do to make sure that there is performance space possibly available at that time? Because there may be better alternatives than keeping the Nanaimo Centre stage, but perhaps keeping the Nanaimo Centre stage would be the best thing to do. But if Council were to vote in favor of liquidating the Nanaimo Centre stage, it would be unfortunate not to see any space for small arts performances.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. With your explanation, you've prompted some interest here from Councillor Johnstone, Councillor Patchy, and Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe this motion is very premature. We have not yet had the discussions. We haven't liquidated the asset yet, and I feel it's way too premature to be even contemplating this.
Thank you. Councillor Patchy, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be voting for this motion because it puts the cart before the horse as far as I'm concerned. There are obviously thoughts about alternate venues for Centre Stage, and one of them was pointed out to me by Mr. Smythe today. And when the time comes, then I will certainly be talking about it. It was a very good one, in fact, but now is not the time to deal with that. I think now that we have voted to go through the budget process, we should do that first and vote it down if we don't like it.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I too won't support this motion, primarily because it is premature, but also because there were other remedies that we were seeking with this building. We were seeking some remedies for a neighborhood that was experiencing a lot of upset. The neighborhood didn't feel that it was necessarily safe, and so one of the reasons we chose that spot was to attract more people to the neighborhood, people on the streets. And I think that before we made a motion sending staff out to canvass other venues, I think we would have to give them a lot more criteria, and I think that criteria needs to be thought out. So that's for those reasons.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, this will be your last opportunity.
Yep, thank you. The reason I brought this motion forward is not that I think it's premature. At least Council will have the opportunity to weigh the merits of keeping the Nanaimo Centre stage, whereas perhaps there may be better alternatives. But if Council doesn't think that's the best thing, or that the motion's premature, that we can just defeat it, and I'll bring it back up again during the budget process should the building be.
Thank you. With no more discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion on the floor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. We move into item 11. This is bylaws, and I will call on Councillor Anderson, please.
That zoning bylaw, the zoning amendment bylaw
2012 number 4500.022 RA290 to rezone 191 King Road from single residential dwelling R1 to a split of single residential dwelling small lot R2 and duplex residential R4 to permit subdivision of the land be adopted.
Moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.026 RA295 to rezone 2012 Northfield Road from single dwelling residential R1 to row house residential R7 to allow for 3 fee simple row house dwellings be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All in favor?
That zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.027 RA297 to rezone 2350 Barclay Road from single dwelling residential R1 to single dwelling residential small lot R2 to facilitate a 2-lot subdivision be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.031 general amendments including text amendments and mapping changes be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.033 Chamber of Commerce amendments be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That bylaw notice enforcement bylaw 2012 number 7159 to provide notice for the enforcement of bylaw notices be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Mr. Chair, sorry for the interruption. We have a correction under 11B. It should say the zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 450.026 RA295 to rezone 2021, not 2012.
Are you sure 2012 doesn't want to be rezoned?
That's why.
If we could ask council just to reconsider this particular motion one more time.
So we'll just revisit that in its entirety?
Please.
Councillor Anderson, please, on B.
That zoning amendment bylaw 2012 number 4500.026 RA295 to rezone 2021 Northfield Road from single dwelling residential R1 to row house residential R7 to allow for 3 fee simple row house dwellings be adopted.
Second by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Carried. 2012 Northfield almost had a lucky day.
Move that revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw 2012 number 7160 to provide for the borrowing of money in anticipation of revenue be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Kipp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. We move into correspondence. We have...
We've received correspondence.
A and B, thank you. Is there any, seconded by Councillor Johnstone?
Yeah.
And is there any action required on any of the correspondence?
A, B, and C. A, B, and C.
A, B, and C. Thank you. Councillor Johnstone, did you second that?
Yeah, I did, and I'd like to speak to correspondence from the Rosemary Bonanno. I'd like to move that Diane Brennan and be reappointed as chair of the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board, VIRLB, or as our committee representative, along with Councillor Anderson as the alternate.
Seconded by Councillor Patchy. I trust that you are so willing to serve. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. We now move into notice of motions. I believe we have 4. We have 2 listed, and I believe that there's 2 late notice of motions. 14A, Councillor McKay.
Your Worship, before Councillor McKay starts on this, because this one's fairly self-evident and assuming Council supports it, I'd recommend you just deal with it tonight, because I'm worried about a 2-week delay, because this, I think, is a timely issue. So I'd recommend on A, which is Councillor McKay will read, that Council just vote on it and resolve it tonight.
Thank you. Good suggestion. Councillor McKay, if you would like to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the City Manager is correct. The public comment period for this particular application is passed this past Thursday. However, they do believe that this will be accepted. So my motion is, whereas Greyhound applied to the Passenger Transportation Board to reduce service between Victoria, Nanaimo, and Nanaimo-Campbell River, and whereas Tofino Bus applied to the Pacific Passenger Transportation Board to increase service on their Victoria-Nanaimo, Nanaimo-Tofino, and Nanaimo-Campbell River routes, and whereas, if approved, the Tofino Bus application would provide employment and supply opportunities for Nanaimo citizens and businesses, therefore be it resolved that Council direct staff to prepare a letter of support to the Passenger Transportation Board in support of the Tofino Bus application with copies to relevant AVICC communities.
Seconded by Councillor Johnstone. Any discussion on the motion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item B, Councillor Kipp.
Just a notice of motion that we'll be talking about with the mayor away. We'll bring it back on the 17th of December just to look at conducting a core services review, including some of the information that we've already done, like our strategic plan, the building trust document, some of the stuff the staff has done. I can believe we can complete a core review at a lot cheaper rate than we had quoted a couple of years ago. I think it's timely, so I'll bring it forward on the 17th.
Thank you. And with my apologies to staff, I did not write down what the late notice of motions were. There was 2, so if those people, if I could be reminded, please.
Mr. Chair, the item C was the town hall budget process from Councillor Anderson.
Was there another? And then
yes. Sorry, number D was the riparian setback by Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
I'll be bringing the motion for Monday, December 17th, that Council directs staff to investigate the feasibility for further public participation and engagement on the budget, such as a town hall or electronic town hall.
Thank you. And Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Beswick. Again, on December 17th, then, I will present a motion that Council requests the Planning Department to review the riparian setback variation policy in consultation with the Advisory Committee on Environmental Sustainability and the Development Community and make recommendations for change, if any, to Council. Now, I'd like to include, actually, the committee that Jim and you and Bill are on, but I forget the name.
Okay. DPRC.
Okay, so it would be in consultation with ACES and the DVRC and the development community to make recommendations for change, if any, to Council.
Thank you. No other notices of motion? I may not come on December 17th. That's just a notice of motion. Just kidding, of course. Thank you very much. There's no other business. Therefore, we'll move.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Other business.
Now, Mr. Chair, I made Mr. Taylor promise that he wouldn't take pictures because it'll be all over his blog tomorrow. Sorry, Councillor Kipp, you've already been got because he showed me the one he got earlier. So Councillor Patchy and myself attended the kickoff for the for Operation Red Nose a couple of weeks back. Oh, short noses here. Sorry, and we just wanted to say that this season, as opposed to This would go great with your tie, or here's your shirt. And it's let Rudy take the wheel. Please do not drink and drive over the course of the holidays, and take Operation Red Nose home. They have over 300 volunteers. There will be Friday and Saturday nights every weekend through New Year's.
Thank you, Councillor McKay. That is a wonderful initiative, and compliments to Pacific Sport for doing such. Thank you for that. We'll move right into question period. If there's any questions as it relates to the agenda items only. If you could please provide us, Gord, with your name and address.
Gord Fuller, 604 Nicholl Street. I recognize that the motion was not in jeopardy because of a potential conflict of interest, but what I would like to know is if the mayor voting on that particular issue was in breach of conflict of interest, whether it was a conflict of interest to be voting on that item or not.
Your Worship, that question wasn't asked by staff of the solicitor. That would be a question you'd have to direct to the mayor. Under council's conflict of interest policy, council members are responsible for making their own decisions about conflict of interest.
Well, I just recall in the past that a number of other occasions, councillors have breached conflict of interest things, and it has been brought forward, so I was just curious about that. And, you know, recognizing that it didn't affect the vote because so many people were in favor, I have to wonder if other councillors can now vote on things that they might have a conflict in and then ask for forgiveness later because it didn't affect the vote.
Point well taken. Thank you. Any other questions for council? Sure. Christy, will she be able to read them quick? Shall it be best for Christy to use the microphone at the end? Okay.
Hi, my name is Christy Timmis, and I live at 718 Wentworth Street in Nanaimo. My question is similar to Gord's, and I've been a student in VIU, and this semester we've taken a course on local and regional government, and it's been a great course, and I would advise all of you to read the textbook. It's great. I've loved it. It's called Canadian Local Government. It talks about so many issues. We have talked about conflict of interest in our class extensively, especially given recent events in other cities. So my question is similar to Gord's in that, in looking at the community charter, I wonder, is the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Area, does that fall under Section 93 of the community charter?
The DNBIA falling under the community charter is the question.
Mr. Chairman, is the question, do the members of the DNBIA have to follow the same rules on conflict as the city councillors? Is that the question?
Yeah.
I don't happen to know the answer to that. Yeah, they are an independent society. They are funded by the city, so I don't have the answer, but my belief is that this charter rules for councillors would not apply.
They are funded by the city, of course, and they are also self-funded to 50%, so I wouldn't know for sure what their constitution would be as it relates to conflict of interest, but perhaps Councillor Kipp might have more information to shed.
Well, I just know that under the Corporate Act of British Columbia, there's conflict of interest guidelines that are set out for societies, and they're fairly strict too, and I think they follow the lines of what we do in our Local Government Act. So I believe they would be similar.
With the question, might I ask that we could investigate the question and have a response for Christy and ourselves as well for future reference?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you. Any other questions, Christy?
No, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions from the audience?
Mr. Fuller.
350 Hammond Bay Road. It was nice to hear Mr. Sasha Angus tonight. It's good to see that things are coming around. Hopefully, I was wondering when the Progress Nanaimo board was going to meet next, so that quite possibly some parameters could be set to judge the successes on this Hands Length Corporation that the taxpayers are funding.
I'm not a member of the board, but
Mr. Chairman, I can advise that the next date has not been set. There's currently discussions underway about what the next meeting would constitute and how it would be structured, but there has not been a date set to this point.
Thank you. And one last question. In the future, as to the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw, would it not be more feasible to borrow money from city reserves and pay them back into the city reserves when needed rather than paying interest to a financial institution?
Mr. Chairman, yes, certainly that is appropriate on occasion. In fact, the shortfall in funds available for the new Service and Resource Center, the funding for that has been borrowed from the sewer reserve. So this is something that is done routinely. However, this bylaw is there for two reasons. One is because the credit card issuers require it as a borrowing instrument just to protect the amount that's outstanding on the credit cards at any one time, and also in the event that all of the city money, including all the money in reserves, is invested, and the maturity dates are such that there could be a few days where it's prudent to leave the money in an investment rather than draw it out early to meet an obligation. And so this borrowing facility allows the city to bridge any potential cash flow shortages. So the idea here isn't for long-term borrowing, it's just for short-term cash flow purposes.
Thank you. This is not a new borrowing mechanism that we've adopted from the previous years. Any other questions from the audience? There being none, motion to adjourn. Thank you very much for participating and viewing your city's business. Thank you.
Well done.